Hey everybody, Z Garcia here, and today we're taking a look at an expansion, a standalone expansion to Arkham Horror, the card game. This is Guardians of the Abyss. This expansion is going to take us to Egypt, where we must contend with mysteries and monsters, things bigger than ourselves, in order to save people and save ourselves, of course, save our sanity. The usual tropes for Arkham Horror, the card game, and really any Arkham Horror game. This is a two-parter scenario, so it has two different games you can play right in it. And just like every other standalone scenario, you can play this as standalone mode, or you can play this as campaign mode, as a side story inserted into a bigger story arc, okay? And again, two parts, one being the first one, flowing into the other one thematically with some things carrying over. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a look at some of the content that comes in it. I am not spoiling anything. So when I say I'm showing you some of the stuff that comes in it, I mean very little. I'll talk a bit about it, and then we'll come on back up here, and I'll tell you what I think of it, who I think this might be good for. All right? Here we go. So here is what you are getting with this expansion. You've got your rule book here and your two scenarios, the Eternal Slumber, the Night's Usurper. You are going to play these individually, of course, as you can everything in the game, or you can play them as basically a mini campaign, just playing this one first, and then a lot of the information that is carried over goes right into this one. Various things that, depending on how well or badly you did in the first one, will affect the second one, okay? So a big part of the deck that makes up the encounter deck for these is shared between them, which is this deck of cards right here. And it is, of course, very thematic to what is going on in pretty much both of them. So be aware of that there is a large chunk of the deck of encounter cards you are going to be seeing across both of these, making it a little less than diverse, okay? So they feel a bit similar when it comes to that, simply because you'll be encountering a lot of the same encounter cards from that deck. Now, let me make a couple of observations here, since I'm obviously not going to be showing you the contents of these decks. That would spoil the surprise and the fun in the game. Let me just briefly tell you a couple of observations, then we'll go back up top, and I'll finish with some final thoughts and some more specifics about what I think of this set, all right? So let's start with the theme. I think thematically, this is a great set. I think it flows from the first one into the second one very nicely. The Egyptian setting is wonderful. You have to like a lot of the reading, a lot of the getting into the story that is being presented. You're going to have to do some of that heavy lifting as far as, you know, investing yourself in what is going on. A lot of the people who find this game is, generally speaking, not thematic, it's just a bunch of reading, will have a big problem with this. This is, by their definition then, not thematic. This just has a bunch of reading. I find that to be theme. I find that to be engaging. What's happening as the beats are going on. You know, you're chasing someone down, they give you this information, you have to go back over to this place and find out what that information meant. You are going to open up a door you weren't expecting to go through, etc., etc. So that is all a big part of this, okay? So thematic link, thematic connection between them, and just as a general setting is very engaging to me. As I already said, a lot of the cards do make up the same encounter deck, so be aware of that. That's going to pull back a little bit on the, you know, the difference between the two scenarios, though they are certainly different. You're seeing a lot of the same cards across them. And then two mechanisms that I want to talk about here that I think are interesting. If not necessarily mind-blowingly unique, they are interesting, and they are in both of these. That would be Strength of the Abyss, that you see across the bottom of these two. That is going to be a sliding scale of difficulty of strength that you are going to have to manage. Many things are going to drive it up. You are going to be attempting to push it back down. You're going to be rewarded for doing so oftentimes. You are going to be punished for it going too high. The game generally becomes very hard. If you let that number balloon to the point that, you know, you're likely going to allow it to be impossible if you let that number go too high. And it has no cap. It can just keep going up. So you have to be very mindful of that. It's a cool idea. It's an ever-present reminder that things are dire, and I like it as a mechanism. The other thing is exploration, and we've had explore in some of the other expansions in the game, but in this one it fits thematically so extremely well that I like it a lot, and it's in both. You will be exploring, as in, drawing a card from the top of a deck, a secondary deck, and seeing if it's a location you can travel to, and travel to that spot, okay? Really works well. It lends a lot to the searching through the desert vibe that is going on here. So there you go. Those are, again, general ideas. Let's go back up top. Let me tell you a couple more things. So, things I really liked, okay? The theme, I think, is great. Again, if people don't like the story in these kinds of games, there's nothing that this one's going to do to change their minds. But I think it's a cool setting. I enjoyed the story here a lot. The aesthetics are great. Lots of wonderful illustrations. The entire thing really draws me in, anyway. I like the ease of play here. I think it's well explained. I think it flows well. At least the ease of play is good. I'm not going to talk about it flows well. We'll come back to that. And then the tactics and strategy. There's different ways to tackle most things that this presents to you, okay? And that's one of my favorite things about it, actually, that there are ways you can attack this big baddie or parlay your way out of some issue. Or you can go and collect these various things to achieve one way to completion, or you can just punch some big monster in the face and try to achieve completion that way. That's cool. I think this one does that well. It does this sort of, whether it's real or imaginary, but it appears to give you these choices that are captivating, okay? A couple of things I think are a little weaker. The replay value here is not as diverse as some of the other scenarios, especially some of the other standalone scenarios in the universe here, in the mythos, okay? Once you've run through these a few times, and I've played each about 5 times, then there's not a ton of variability to the way it plays out. And so, like, by the 4th time you play, let's say, you will do things that don't make any sense for you to do, just because you know you need to do them, because you know what's coming. Okay? So that hurts the replay value a little bit for me. And then the other one is the game arc. By that I mean, this is probably one of my bigger negatives. The game has both scenarios, but especially the first one, okay? The slumber. What is it? The eternal slumber. They have a bit of a bad habit of having you set up all these things, giving you a world, giving you a setting, giving you a task. And then once you are nearly there, or once you're invested in whatever's going on, then the game goes, okay, fine, forget all that. Get rid of all these locations, get rid of all this stuff, put it all away. Here's what you're doing now. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, I'm doing a completely different thing. And then once you're into that, it'll be like, okay, get rid of all this, set this other thing up. This is the third part. Forget about that. Do this now. So it does that a little too much for me, and I find it breaks the immersion, it breaks cohesion a little bit. Again, yes, I can make that mental leap and go, well, I know what's going on thematically. I get it. But it just does it a bit too much for me. I like the ones that put you in some setting and then it evolves from that same setting, okay? Like, for example, there's one of the earlier standalone scenarios, the Carnival of Horrors. I think that's what it was called. That one put you in Venice, at Carnival, and it used the same setting to go through beats in the story without sort of pulling, the rug out from under you. And this one, you might feel like it's done that to you once or twice, okay? So there you go. The other thing is that besides sort of resetting the story, resetting the setting for you, it's extremely difficult. I mean, like, really punishing difficult. If If you don't care about that, or if you're great at the game, then don't worry about it. If you want to make it easier, you can always modify the bag, you know, the chaos bag, and do whatever you want. But it is extremely, extremely difficult. From what I understand, it even gets worse with more than 2 players, which I haven't played this with more than 2, but it is punishing. It's a very tough scenario, 2 scenarios. I like both. I would say I like the second one a little more. It does less of that rug yanking thing I'm talking about. And it kind of feels like it gets to it a little more quickly. It's this, you know, it's a big epic showdown largely, the second one. And it moves along. It gets going. It's more crazy and cinematic and wild, okay? Another thing I should talk about before I wrap this up is the explore feeling in the game and the strength of the abyss. As I said in the overview, they are great. I would definitely recommend if you enjoy the explore mechanism that you might have seen in some of the other story arcs, you're going to like it in this one. That's really cool. So there you go. Overall, I like this one. I don't think it's one of my favorite scenarios, but the theme goes a long way into making it a really cool one. I could see myself returning to this once some time has passed and I have forgotten how badly it beat me. I'll come back to it. I'll enjoy diving into the setting again, into the weird theme again, into all the cosmic horror and craziness that this one presents. So there you go. Overall, I like it, but it's not one of my favorites, okay? And I think it would be good for completionists and for those of you who love a challenge and those of you that like the Egypt setting. But I would recommend some of the other ones, the standalone ones, if you want something, if you're still sort of getting into it, if you don't know what Explore is yet, if you haven't played that, I would wait on this one. Go for some of the other standalone ones, all right? So there you go, Guardians of the Abyss. I like it. This is going to get a 7 from me, which is a seal of approval. And that's all there is to it. Thanks, everybody, for checking this out with me. I'll be doing some other standalone reviews of these scenarios, like this one, for example, very soon. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. My name is Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.